Hello, everybody. Welcome. I know we have a minute or so before we get started, but I always like to kind of chime in live so I can get myself situated before our stream gets started. Thank y'all so much for joining me today. I hope you had a good day. It was a long day for me, but I'm here, and this is the part of the day when it's time for me to stream that I'm always looking forward to. So, as I'm just getting all of my stuff ready, I'm just going to ask if there are students watching this stream. I think it's so important to be able to take notes, write things down. You can't always remember everything right offhand. I hope that you would tune in to watch the replay if you missed anything. But if you're like me and you like to jot things down, I always like to have my handy dandy pens next to me, my notebook to write things in. So go and get the things that you need so that you can get situated. I have water in case I get parched, and my husband's on dog duty because he likes to look out the window and bark at the squirrel and the dogs that are passing by. So, welcome, welcome. Let me pull up my notes here for you so that we'll be ready to go. Just want to share my screen with you. And please forgive me if I look down a little bit. I always like to have my own notes handy because the eyesight is not what it used to be. And I don't want to put my face extremely close to the screen so that I can read what's on the screen. So let me just pull this out. And I am just going to take my slides and just hover them over here. All right, and we're ready to go. I hope that you were tuned in to the correct Fiveable cast. This is AP Human Geography. Tonight we are going to be talking about scales of analysis. So I hope you're ready to go. If everybody could just join in, just give a quick hello, introduce yourself, maybe say where you're from. I think that would be so awesome. I would appreciate that. So tonight, if you're tuning in, we are taking a look at scales of analysis. Ooh, I love this. Now, I'm not too sure where you are. Right now, we are in our 6th week of school. So a lot of the students at the school that I'm at, they've finished up Unit 1, which is that geographically thinking unit, and they are moving on to Unit 2, maybe finishing up some tests, some quizzes, maybe there's some reteaching going on, and they've started population and migration. And we have some great streams coming up related to population and migration. So I hope that you check out some of our other awesome student streamers who will be bringing you some of those streams. So let's go ahead and get started. I don't know where give me one moment. Here we go. Okay. Okay, I'm having an issue. Give me one moment. Just want to make sure I can see you all. All right, y'all, and here we go. So tonight I'm going to be bringing you scales of analysis, and I want to come just to remind you, as always, You can find us on at Thinkable, at Thinkfiveable. Please follow us on Twitter. Please follow us on Instagram, and please follow us on YouTube. This is where you can find a lot of these items, and we want you to just be present and be able to go back and to see these things. So please check us out there. Also, I also would like to get started with just looking at what the College Board has to say about scales of analysis. So I took this from the book, and I wanted us to just take a look here at what the course guide has to say about scales of analysis. So for scales of analysis, it states, and I'm just going to read directly here from the screen. It says that the enduring understanding that students are supposed to have when looking at scales of analysis is geographers analyze relationships among and between places to reveal important spatial patterns. So what does that mean? Well, I'm happy you asked. There's a breakdown. So the learning objective is that by the time students are done with this unit, by the time you, student, are done with this section, that you'll be able to define scales of analysis used by geographers. And like I said, AP Human is a heavy vocabulary written course. Like, you're learning new vocabulary at an exponential rate. So so to be able to define this concept of scales of analysis, this means that you will be able to state or describe exactly what scales of analysis is, exactly the meaning of this concept. Another definition for this ability to be able to define is to state or identify the essential qualities or meaning of something. And that's very key, especially when you're writing your FRQs. You want to be able to precisely state what that concept is. And that concept is scales of analysis. So your ability to be able to do that. You should be able to do this in written and verbal form. And so many times we think that it's enough to just be able to articulate what that thing is, but you also have to get into the habit of being able to verbalize it as well as being able to write it in written form. And the next thing that it talks about that goes along in connection to that is that the essential knowledge that you're going to walk away with after students finish scales of analysis was the scales of analysis include that you were going to be able to identify these various scales, right? That you were going to be able to identify what a global perspective is, a regional, a national, and a local. And you also have to understand analysis. Analysis means that you're able to break it down to its various components and talk about it at each of those levels. So that's something that you should have walked away with from this unit, or if you're still in this section, to be able to walk away with. The next thing from scales of analysis is explain what scales of analysis reveal, and that means to show. Like, when we're talking about scales of analysis, those maps are telling a story. When you're looking at things at various scales, you should be able to walk away with saying, I know the story. It's like turning, if you have a parent that loves the Hallmark Channel, it's like turning to the Hallmark Channel in the middle of a show that's on and being able to break down the various components, like who are the main characters, what's going on, what's this conflict that they're having. So that's what you need to be able to do with scales of analysis. And then the essential knowledge that goes along with being able to explain what scales of analysis reveal is that you should have a thorough understanding of the patterns and the processes at different scales, and understand that they reveal variations in and at different interpretations in data and different interpretations of data. So again, I always like to break things down for you. And you need to understand, when we're looking at patterns and you're looking at these scales, what's the story that's being told there? I think that that's so important. So patterns are what's reoccurring, what's being repeated in a certain area, what's going on with the design, with where things are when we're analyzing things at various scales. Process, how things are done. It's a series. So there are things that are being done within these various scales, and do the processes change when we're at a small scale or at a large scale? So those are some of the things that College Board is saying, look, you need to be able to do this thing, and we need you to be able to carry it through for an extended period of time. It's not just the isolated, so we don't work in silos, right? It's not this isolated thing. All right, next. So here's our learning for the day. And I like to operate in learning targets. So our learning for the day is that by the time you are completed with this streaming session, that you're going to have the ability to, number one, I can define scale, that you have a working definition of what that is. Number two, that you can identify various scale types. Number three, that you can explain what scales reveal. And so I'm going to take you through some different scale activities and looking at some events at different scales, and we'll have a discussion about that. I can explain how pattern and process at different scales reveal variation in and different interpretation of data. So all those things that College Board is saying is necessary. By the time we're done with this stream, my sincere hope is that you are able to do it, or at least if you can, that you can do it at a deeper level. Next. So here is our opening activity. And so this is what I'm going to ask you to do, a little crowd participation. If you could, I would like for you to take a look at this image, read it, from my yard all the way to my home. So read it going across. And I want you to identify one thing that you notice related to the changing image as the frame moves from my yard to my home. And in the comment section, if you could you please type your response? So what is something that you see? What is something that you notice as you're watching this changing image from my yard to my home? So if you could take a moment and type that in now, I would so appreciate it. And I really want you to zoom in and take a look at, what can you see? What can you not see at those various scales? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to speak on that a little bit. And I want to talk to you about, as you see this image moving from my yard to my home, I'm hoping that some of the things that you're observing is that, well, in the my yard image, I'm seeing more of the dog. I see, okay, so Mr. Garcia says, my son says you can see more details of space in my yard. Absolutely. Thank you. That's fantastic. If you see me jump, just give me a moment. It looks like a storm is coming, and so there's thunder and lightning, and I'm not complaining because it's hot in Georgia and we need some of this release. So yes, so you can see more details in the space in the yard, in the neighborhood. And what you start to notice as the image is changing from my yard to my neighborhood is, oh, wait a minute, now I see more of the fence. I see more of the dog. I see less of the dog. I see that there are more trees. As you switch over to my town, you notice that you can see more of the house. You can't even see the dog anymore. You can only see portions of the tree. Again, as it goes to my country, you can't even see that house anymore. You can't see that dog anymore. And so again, this is various scales of analysis. And then by the time we get all the way over to the end, we're looking at my home, all you can see is the earth. So this is, in essence, analysis of scales. It's that whole zoom in, zoom out, and what am I going to see when I'm looking at it? So I like to use something, and I'm not the one who created it. I like to use a protocol in my classroom called I see, I think, I wonder. And this is a strategy that if you're a teacher and you're watching, I would highly recommend that you use it. It's a great way to get your students talking about the content, talking about images, and then thinking deeply about it and then wondering. So whenever you see these symbols, I see simply means, what do you see? Just simply state, what do you see? When you see the little thought bubble, and I should say the I is the I see. When you see the thought bubble is I think. What do you think about what you see? I want you to be curious about it and have some wonderings about it. And formulate some questions. I should say that, to formulate some questions. What are your thoughts? Then by the time you get to the last one, which is I wonder, what do you wonder about it? What are some questions that you have? So I like to use the icons by themselves. I like to use them together. Sometimes I pair the I see and I wonder, or sometimes I use think and wonder. So this is a great strategy to use amongst your students. So, and I'm going to have you use it here this evening. So, what is scale? And so my best friend always says, scale is that thing that I get on and cry. And I would agree to concur. Yes, I do the same thing as well. But we have different meanings for for the same concept. And so let's explore this meaning of scale and zero into the one that applies to AP Human Geography. So here on the screen, I would like you to take a look at the following. And I want you, there are several different meanings for scale, but I'm looking for the one that specifically applies to AP Human. So I would like you to select the answer choices that best fit a geographical definition of what scale is related to AP Hub. So if you could, in the comment section, could you please type in the letters that you feel apply? And I'm going to take a moment and read these scale definitions. So the first scale definition that we have is a conceptual hierarchy of spaces from small to large that reflect actual levels of organization in the real world. B says a thick, dry flake of skin. C, an instrument or machine for weighing something. D, the measurement of a map, ratio of space on a map to space on the globe. Or E, an organized sequence of notes ordered by fundamental frequency or pitch. So if you could, please type in what are the letters that you feel apply to AP Human Geography. And I know as I was working on doing these definitions, so my son and daughter both play music, and one day she was talking about this, and I thought, wow, that is another definition of what scale is. And so sometimes that can be the thing that makes our, English so difficult to learn, is that we have all these different definitions for what things mean. So I'm going to say that for AP Human Geography, the definitions that the letters that you should have selected that relate to AP Human would be definitely a conceptual hierarchy, like, from large to smaller, things ranked in order of space from small to large that reflect actual levels of organization in the real world, and the measurement on a map, the ratio of space on a map to space on the globe. Now, is B a definition of scale? It sure is, because I had some salmon the other day and I had to clean the scales, off of it. An instrument or machine of weighing, yes, the one that I cry on. And E, related to my daughter, she was practicing the G scale the other night. And so I thought, yes. So it's also important it's the process of elimination, that ability to be able to do that and eliminate. Those are things that we want our kids, our students to be able to do. So let's just dive right into this. I came across this in a book. I by no means created this. And so here is a perfect example of scale. So scale from a cartographic or a map perspective has three different things that we're looking at, right? We're looking at fractional scale, we're looking at verbal scale, and we're looking at graphic scale. So this is a perfect opportunity for me to utilize I see, I think, I wonder. Could you please tell me what is something that you see related to this explanation of map scale that you notice, and just jot down anything. What is it that you see on this map in relation to cartographic scale? And I'm going to share, and I hope I don't take it, but I always like to lead by example. So one of the things that I see is that there's a visual, that there are numbers that are being used. I notice that there's a sliding bar there. What are some things that you see related to scale in this explanation here? And then, I'm sorry, I don't know if you were seeing that, but I hope not. And so, and then what are some things that you think? What are some things that you wonder? So I see that Jesus says that he notices that there's distance on a map. That's excellent. That is something that we see. Mr. Garcia states, my son says, you can see numbers and ratio. Absolutely, you can see that. And so when we're looking at scale, there's always going to be, like I said, a verbal, a fractional, and a graphic scale. And so map scale is the distance on a map compared to the actual distance on the earth, because we cannot actually set out in our classrooms and say, here, go and measure from here to New York City, or what is the distance between here and Texas or Tennessee? So we have to have this comparable relationship that we use to compare, well, what are they really in the real world? So it's the way that a map communicates the ratio of its size to the size of what it actually represents. So if you look at the first thing that they have here, on this fractional scale, it's saying that this image of the United States of America is 1 in 94 million. Like, that's the fraction, that's the ratio that it represents. If you look at our next number right below that, it's stating that this is a map scale of 1 in 37 million. Our next one down, which is showing the Atlanta area, and I love it because this is where I'm located, is 1 in 16 million, and so on to 1 in 100 million, 3,000. So that's what that fractional scale means. There's also the verbal. We have to put that in verbal form, right? So 1 inch on this map represents 1,485 miles. So there's an actual representation there. And so that is a breakdown of this version of scale. And then we also have the graphic scale, right? I would always tell my kids, I want you to measure, what would be the distance between Atlanta and New York City? And you would take that little piece of paper and you would measure. So let me get into this just a little bit further. Let's continue to dig deeper. And so this is the scale that I'm sure a lot of you are probably familiar with. And this is just showing you, how many miles. And so this is the one that I was telling you about. Y'all know the deal where you would take the piece of paper, fold it, put the little marks on it, and then here it's Atlanta to here to Tennessee, and then from Tennessee to here and going through. So a bar scale is particularly important when we are enlarging or reducing maps, because a lot at those scales, they're being photocopied or printed on some type of copy machine. And so the photocopy technique changes the map. And so if the bar scale is included, then you will have a way of measuring how far a distance is. Okay. Next, let's talk about fractional scale, because I wanted to get into that a little bit more. And I know that this is kind of difficult. I know it was challenging for some of our students to get. Just remember, the larger the denominator, the smaller the scale ratio is, and the larger the area that is shown on the map. So I almost want to go back, if you don't mind, I would like to go back to this one for a moment, this image, and just kind of look at this small scale. And so one of the things that I really want you to zoom in and focus in on is the fact that this whole thing, like a camera lens, like we're zooming in and we're zooming out. When you are zoomed out, like in this first image, and we're looking at all of the United States of America, you see less detail, but more area, and therefore this is considered a small scale. If you go here to this bottom image, you are zoomed in, you see more detail, but you see less, but it covers less area. So this is considered a larger scale. So that is what I was trying to represent here in this image, where we're looking at small scale to, and I'm sorry, I think I made, the bottom one should say large scale, y'all. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that I had that typo, but it'll be fixed by the time I upload the presentation. So the small scale is at the top, and spelling error, sorry. Small scale is at the top, and larger scales are at the bottom. Let's get that one so that I don't dwell on that too much. So I would like to take a look. I think, I wonder, large scale or small scale. So if you could you please tell me, is A large scale or small scale? If you could type that in for me, please. And then I want to do a little bit of I see, I think, I wonder, and talk about what do you notice about the differences between the large scale and small scale as far as what you can see. So I am getting that A is small scale. And so what would you say would be B? Would B then, do you have small scale for that? So B is large scale and A is small scale, and you're absolutely correct. And so let's talk a little bit about these images. So when you look at this map of the United States of America, as opposed to the map of, this is New York City, New York, New York, what do you notice about what you can see in the A, in the small scale map? What do you notice that you can see? Can you see a lot of detail? Can you see the roads? Can you see the cities and the individual towns? What do you notice there? And please forgive me, I'm going to get a little water. And it was no mistake that I picked New York, because I was born and raised there. Okay, so Caroline says, in A, there isn't much detail, roads, cities, etc. Absolutely. Mr. Garcia stated, in A, you can see the outline of the states in the United States. You sure can. Now, talk to me a little bit. What do you see in the B map? What do you notice there in the B map? And so these are things that I would be taking my students through. These are conversations that I want y'all to have. And this is the type of thinking that I want to go on as you are going through your journey through AP Human Geography. I really need you to have that ability to kind of dig deeper and drill down. It's not just a map. So I see someone stated, but in B, there is, because since it is a large scale, it can show you outlines of city rather than states. Absolutely correct. Thank you. And show more detail because it is a map of a smaller area. Okay, all valid points, all valid. Thank y'all for that. Now, you need to have this understanding. So that's our fractional, that's our scale when we're measuring from one spot to another. That is our ratio. That is one section of scale for AP Human Geography. And those are things that you need to take into consideration. But in AP Human, we also deal on this different plane, right? We're also dealing with this concept. I always loved these Russian tea dolls. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is such a perfect analogy for another way that we need to look at scale. So another way that we need to look at scale is looking at scale from its spatial extent of a variable. There are different scales of analysis, and they can change based on what level you are looking at. So for the most part, geographers deal in 4 types of scale. Now, that's not to say that there are only 4 levels to looking at things from a geographic scale, but in class, when your teacher is talking about scale, these are definitely 4 that I want you to keep in mind. And I also want you to start thinking about, well, what are the other areas, the other levels that I can look at this? So scale is the amount of territory that a map represents. Now, when you think of scale, I want you to think of the larger picture, right? I want you to think of global, worldwide. And usually when you're seeing it, you get to see less detail. You are looking at this thing from a bigger perspective, right? You can also look at things from a national scale. That's now we're getting a little more zoomed in, right? And the rest of the world is starting to fade away. You can look at things from a country perspective as a national. So what do things look like what does this topic look like if I only examined it from the United States perspective, or I only looked at it from Switzerland or Spain or, Nigeria? Zooming in a little closer, you can look at things from a regional scale, a particular area, or you can look at things from a local scale. So I felt like these Russian tea dolls were just the perfect way to imagine what looking at these things from various scales looked like. Next, what are some things we can examine at various scales? We could look at pollution. We could look at what's going on with income. We could look at the education level of women. Could you provide me a topic that we could look at besides gender? What are some other things that we could look at either from a global scale, a national scale, a regional scale, or a local scale? And could you just type that topic and put, you could just either use the L, the R, the N, or the G, so you don't have to type out everything. Yes, poverty. So being that I'm from New York City, I could look at poverty from, what did poverty look like in Brooklyn? What does poverty look like? That would be a local scale, right? What does poverty look like in New York City? Now I'm looking at things from just this regional level. What does poverty look like in the United States of America? I can say, when we're examining the poverty rate, what does that look like? And it changes. Or we can look at a global scale. What does poverty look like across the globe, from one country to another country? Population, income inequality. You can use all 4 scales. You're absolutely correct. And so that's the mindset that we want you to have when you're looking at this. So here's a little bit of I see and I think. So first of all, when you see this, this is a global scale. I thought that migration is a beautiful thing to look at when you're looking at things from a global scale. Um, I'm giving y'all this link. There is this absolutely wonderful site that I would love for you to visit. Let me see if I can pull it up for you here. Um, there is this wonderful site that I love to visit, and I should have pulled it up in advance, and I'm so sorry. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to maneuver to it because it's frozen inside of this PowerPoint, but it's called Metro Cosmo. When you get a chance, please visit it because our students are using it right now to map migration, and especially since we're going into the population and migration unit. This is an absolutely wonderful site, and I'll try to pull it back up again. I'm new, so I'm trying to get maneuvering through all these screens, but it actually shows you the world population and where are people exiting, where the immigrants, where the, like, just migration all over. So it's a great site. So I always like to give you tidbits and resources that you can use and go to. So global scale analysis, here we can look at issues such as international migration. When we are looking at things from an international scale, this is us looking at this map of Europe, and all of Europe, there are a bunch of sovereign states, right? So what do you see here? When you look at this map of Europe, what would be some topics that you think you could look at from that would impact Spain, France, Italy, and I'm hoping that y'all are up on the current, political issues that are going on with, if you're not students, you stay in touch with your CNN student news. But what are some things that you could look at an international level, especially dealing with these sovereign states here in Europe? There's one that came to my mind in particular, but I'm hoping that you have some others. And so I am just going to give the first letter. It starts with an E, and I'm hoping that you have the other part. And so what we have here is a smattering of sovereign states. When you're looking at things from an international scale, we're looking at the euro. Oh, there's a second letter that goes with it that I'm thinking of. Like Brexit would be a clue of this organization that could be looked at that's impacting all of Europe. So yes, thank you. So when we're looking at things from an international scale, well, looking at the European Union, this is a regional cooperation and talks about regional cooperation and interdependence. There are things those are things that you can examine at this level. Maybe we would look at things from an international scale of maybe the United Nations and looking at that. So that's an important scale. Let's take a look, let's drill down a little more. Let's take a look at a national scale. So what do you see here? What do you think are some things that you can analyze at this scale? So here's a map of Spain and Portugal. We don't want to forget that over there. So when we're looking at things at a national level of analysis, what can you see more of here in this image that you could not see in the last image of Europe? Europe, that was like, all of the countries. So what can you see more of here? And I know this may be a little redundant back to the first one, but I really want to make sure that you have an understanding. And I'm hoping. And so things, as you're telling me what you can see more of here, issues that can be analyzed at this level would be things related to borders, things related to organization of states that fall into this category. Thank you. Absolutely correct. That's what I said. States, excellent. And then lastly, so far we've talked about the global scale. We've talked about the international scale. We've talked about the national scale. Now let's take a look at another. Let's talk about the regional scale. So this is the exact same country. This is Spain. Now I'm looking specifically at this particular region of Spain, and we're going to, maybe in your class or your teacher's going to ask you to do this regional level of analysis. You can now see, which was already said, more roads. You can see towns now, smaller towns, in addition to the regional center, and issues like, which come later on in the school year, issues like sphere of influence are things that could be analyzed from this scale, commute patterns, metro areas, how dependent is the periphery, that's what's on the outside of the city, to the core, which is Madrid itself. So all of these things come into play. And so these are things that we're thinking about and considering. I added the local scale. And when we're looking at local scale of analysis, issues such as services, industry, urban organization, these are all things that we can analyze at this local scale. It's not the end all be all, but it's the things that we can analyze. So this is the most intimate scale in which you can analyze things. And it's at the level that we feel it the most. If things are going on in at the local scale, I'm definitely feeling them a lot more than I may if something is at a global scale or an international scale. All right. And of course, some issues apply to all levels. And a lot of the topics that were listed here in the comment section, definitely. So population is a major example. You can look at population at every single scale. It has other issues that you can examine besides population would be things like culture. Because as we become a more connected world, culture is definitely diffusing, another chapter that you'll get into with your teachers. And we become more and more, and it becomes more and more significant as you zoom in and out, looking at and analyzing things at various scales. So you must remember, and I love this, I got this from, I hope I'm saying it right, Quora.com states, Scale in geography is how you zoom in on the map and the different issues in geography that come up at different scales. So with that in mind, I want us to dig deeper. And this is the part that I'm really, really excited about. Don't know how far we'll get, but at least we're going to have a good time digging into the scale and putting all these things into use. So here is our first little activity. I want you to, I see, I think, I wonder. What do you see here? What do you think is going on here? What do you wonder? And so here are some of the questions that I would like for you to respond to. What scale is this? Is this a global, a national, a regional, or a local scale? Yes, definitely. This is a national scale. Can anybody tell me who were the two front runners for this particular election? So it's somewhere up there. What do you see? Who were the two front runners? Excellent. So we have Obama and Obama and McCain. So Barack Obama and Joe Biden were running against Senator John McCain and Governor Sarah Palin in the 2008 presidential election. So so we already said that it's a national scale. Now, what story does this scale tell you? If I don't zoom in any further, what does looking at something from a national scale tell you? What's the story that's being told here? And I love that. I love asking the students, what is the story that is being told here? Because this map is definitely telling a story. So this story is telling you which candidate each state voted for. Excellent. So I know Texas voted for McCain. I know that Washington State voted for Obama. I know Georgia voted for McCain. Can anyone tell me what this, analyzing something at a national scale based on this election, what does it not tell me? Because the map tells you when you're analyzing something at this scale, it's telling you something, but there's also a part of the story that is missing. So what do you not know by just analyzing something at this scale? And so this is something I always like to do. So which candidate each state voted, it doesn't tell you electoral votes. Wait, which candidate voted? It's telling me electoral votes. Can you tell me what it is not telling me about the 2008 election? So for example, do you believe that everybody that lives in California, every single person, did every single person in that state vote for Obama? Did every single person in Alaska vote for McCain? Now, Sarah Palin being the front runner, the vice president with McCain definitely could be one, but so I also hear it doesn't tell you the percentages. Absolutely. So what would we need to do? So what would we need to do in order to find out how folks voted in Texas? Would we need to go to a smaller scale, or would we need to analyze at a larger? We would need to zoom in. Absolutely. So let's do that now. So again, I see, I think, I wonder. So this is a deeper dive into the 2018 election between Obama and McCain. So first of all, could you please tell me what type of scale does this map represent? And again, think about those T-dolls, right? Those Russian T-dolls. Is this a global scale? Is this a national scale? Is this a regional scale? Or is it a local scale? And again, keep in mind that Caroline said we need to zoom in. Absolutely. This is a regional scale. So again, I ask you, what is the story that is being told at this scale? Because in our last image, Georgia was totally red. Alabama, totally red. Florida was totally blue. Who else am I missing? Mississippi, totally red. So that's why it's so important to analyze things at a different scale, because a different picture begins to be revealed. And these are things that we need you to do each and every day in AP Human Geography. I know it's a lot coming in as a ninth grader. You're like, I was just in 8th grade, and now you're giving me this college level, but this is the level of thinking that we need for you to have. So according to this, a little bit more of the story is being revealed, right? Now, let's dig a little deeper. Let's dive deeper. I see, I think, I wonder. So same election, 2008 election between Obama and McCain. What scale does this map represent? So again, is this going to be your global, your national, your regional, your local? Absolutely, it's your local. And so now, if we go off of our national scale, well, it looks like, states didn't have any type of variance in who folks were voting for. So what do you notice when we take a closer look at this scale of what took place? And I hope you can see, I tried to get all of these images came from New York Times. So I should have put the links because I don't want you to think that I created them, because I did not. So all of these images came from New York Times when they published the results after the election. So what do you notice if we're examining things from just a local scale? What do you notice about where the blue and the red, who voted for McCain. So again, I would say, what do you see? And then let's talk about patterns, right? Because patterns and processes are a thing that we take a look at. If you look at patterns, what do you notice about the color patterns and where they're located? And so I'm going to give you a moment to respond to that. And then I'm going to take it one step further. And I want to add this. This does not tell you how the folks in my county voted. So when we're looking at things from various scales, again, you want to examine what you see, but you also want to examine what you do not see. And so be sure to look at the spatial patterns when conducting scale analysis. What do you notice about the location of things you were studying? What do you notice about where the colors are located? Are they dispersed? Like, these are AP Hub concepts that you need to understand. Are they dispersed? That means, are they, spread out, or are they clustered? Do you notice that they're in a particular area? And again, always ask yourself, what is the story that is being told here? So you stated here that most of the areas that voted for McCain are towards the middle of the state. Absolutely. And the more metropolitan area. Absolutely. So when you look at Atlanta, you can see Atlanta's blue. Well, I wonder why Atlanta's blue. Well, Atlanta has a predominantly heavy African-American population there, where if you start going out more towards the coastal area or the northern area, you have maybe there are more Caucasians or that live in that area. So those are definitely things that we want to examine and look at. And I love just examining across the fall line of Georgia, that spattering of blue that takes place there. So that's important to look at. So let's dig deeper one more, because we can't leave this presentation without looking at the county in which I live. So if you look here, again, Georgia was red. Georgia, then when we zoomed in a little deeper, we noticed, oh, there are some blues in this area. And now this is an image of Gwinnett County. So right here, I'm pointing, this arrow is where I live. So I'm considered to be I'm part of Metro Atlanta. So I'm about 20 minutes outside of Atlanta. And so this red represents Gwinnett County, but that doesn't tell you the full image, right? So now let's look at it from another scale. So this is what Gwinnett County looked like for the 2008 election. So just taking a deeper dive into the 2008 between Obama and McCain. So what scale of analysis is this that we're doing? Is this global, national, regional, or local? Exactly. So this is just a deeper dive into that local. So I live in Georgia, and so now we're taking this look at Gwinnett. And so what is this story that is conveyed by this? So you do see, again, what are the patterns that you notice, the spatial composition? How does this tell you a different story of what was going on? And again, we just want you to be able to notice these things. It's not necessary that you may even know why at this point, but as you start going through the course, your questions are so important. And so I want to make sure that you're asking good questions. Ask your teachers good questions. Don't just sit there and consume all of the information. And then teachers, challenge your students to have this level of questioning and thinking in their classroom. So when we look at this map of Gwinnett County, can anyone tell me what is being answered by this local level of analysis, or not being answered by looking at this? And again, be sure to look at spatial patterns when conducting scale analysis. I can't state that enough. What do you notice about the location of things? you were studying. So what do you notice about who voted for McCain in Gwinnett and who voted for Obama in Gwinnett? What do you notice? Who voted for McCain? Is that clustered in a particular area? Is it dispersed? What story is being told? So I'm noticing that in the county that I live in, well, in the southern part of the county, there seems to be a lot more blue or a lot more lighter shades of blue. Something that I would be wondering if I was a student looking at this map is, what does the white areas mean? Like, why are there white areas? Your teachers probably did with you various types of maps. So I'm thinking also, wow, what type of map is this that my teacher is showing me? Is this a thematic? Is this a chloropleth? These are all things that you should be putting into play as you are analyzing the scale of analysis. I'm seeing here that some voted for McCain, and most were in the northern area of the county. I'm wondering what was going on the western part of this county, what was going on in the eastern part, what was going on. And so I can, if I told you a little bit more about the demographic breakdown of our county, that would also give you a clue. That would be something to analyze. So at this point, I only have about 5 minutes left, and I have more that I could share with you, and we can certainly go through it, but I want to know, do you have any questions? Is there anything that I can answer for you? Are there any topics that are upcoming for you that you know are going to be a struggle for your students, or you're anticipating a little bit of struggle for either your students or students, you know that there's something that was in your unit 1 that you still would like for me to do in another stream? I would love to hear from you. I will gladly post this. I'm going to fix some things in it first, but I'm going to post this so that you can have access to it. And my next streams, as you're typing in your responses for that, my next stream, things that we were going to just take a look at was looking at the 2004 presidential election. And again, looking at things from that, national scale. And then we were going to dial in a little bit more and then take a look at, well, how did New York State vote? And then take a look at the 2012 election. So, but I am out of time. I think I had more presentation than I had time. And I hope this was beneficial. Do you have any questions? Is there anything that you would, again, like me to cover? I hope this was beneficial. Could you put a thumbs up or thumbs down? Or was there any, new information, or was this pretty much the way that you had been going? So I am going to click through these next few slides and just kind of talk about in these last few minutes, just again, always being mindful of what it is that College Board wants us to look at, and making sure that we have an understanding of the enduring understanding that goes along with that concept that you're learning. It's not enough for just the teacher to know this information. You need to know this information as well. What is it that my teacher expects me to know when I'm done with this topic? I hope that you have a solid understanding of, can you define the term scale and it's as it relates to geography? Can you, I pray that you're able to identify the various scales of analysis used by geographers. I hope that you can identify at least 4 scales which are used to analyze patterns and process, that you can explain and written in verbal form what that scale analysis looks like, and that you can articulate those things in written as well as verbal form. So just before you close out, I just want to make sure, so would you like for me to cover the different types of geography, humanistic and behavioral and etc.? Because I can definitely put a team, density versus distribution versus concentration. I can do that. So I'll go back and take note of those things, and I can definitely do some streams on those things. If you need to reach out to me, I can be reached at Sherelle Tubbs. It's my first and my last name with no spaces in between, and it's at the beginning of the PowerPoint. And at Sherelle Tubbs at att.net. So that's SHIR. Hold on, let me just type it here because that may be easier for you. Okay, so that's the email that you can reach me at if you are in need of anything or want me to share anything with you. And last but not least, could you please let me know with a emoji how beneficial this stream was for you and your level of understanding? The frowny face emoji is like, girl, you didn't do anything for me. And 4, you are absolutely loving it. And with that in mind, please be sure I put some links up here for where I found various scale of analysis activities. And I found great activities at these links, and they're live. That Geography and Madagascar, they had some great scale of analysis activities. As always, 7 o'clock, please follow us at Think Fiveable, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. You can always reach out to me on my email if you need something. And thank you for joining us. And I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic evening. Until we meet again, have a great AP Hug day. Bye, everybody.